Now I gotta ride or die.
So guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are sitting down and having a look at some of the weird Ford products that come out of America, Australia, Japan. Because we didn't get these models in the UK, I thought I'd go through, do a little bit of research and hopefully understand and sort of ask some questions as to why these cars existed in the first place, but why we didn't get them. As ever guys, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and also let me know in the comments below if you know of any weird Ford related products that didn't come to the UK. So we're gonna get right into it because I want to talk quite, not necessarily in depth about each car, but ask the question why we didn't get it and also understand what these cars are. So the first one is going to be, and I've done tons of notes on these cars, is going to be the 2000 Ford SVT Mustang, but the Cobra R edition. Now this came out in the USA and it had a 385 brake horsepower, 32 valve V8 fitted with alloy heads, and this engine actually eventually made its way into the Ford GT. So actually a pretty big deal, this car, to actually share that V8 engine with what was going to be the Ford GT. And yeah, we didn't get it here. There was only ever a 300 made. They were 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. They had a body kit on them. They did look really, really good. I mean, you know, the ones you're seeing on screen now, the spoiler, all this other various stuff. Of course, the Mustang didn't actually come to the UK until the ones we know about now, the recent generations. And I do feel like this era of Mustang was a little bit funny anyway. They were just coming out of the older, pretty terrible era of the Mustang. So I feel like it was only right that they didn't bring the Mustang to the UK here. But what a hell of a car. It looks insane to me. And as we read up a little bit more on it, independent front and rear suspension, no air conditioning, no radio. The seats were Recaro seats in it with a back bench delete, so there was no seating in the back, and most of the sound deadening had actually been taken out of the car as well. The MSRP we're looking at is 54,995, but it was 25 grand over a non-R version. But Ford still sold them all. There was only 300 made, and of course a lot of people out there would have known full well that this car would have gone down in history as one of one, or one of 300. And as well as some different wheels, it actually came with Brembo brakes, 13-inch ones up front. Of course, we're going to ask the question why. Well, the Mustang wasn't in the UK at this present time. V8s were never a thing in the UK. A special version of a Mustang V8 isn't really something that came to the UK. Of course, in the 2000s, it would have never, ever have worked here. And I feel like, again, it was still years and years until people sort of wanted cars like that. I feel like, especially in the 2000s, a lot of people didn't necessarily want, you know, especially a two-seater coupe looking, or at least a not as practical version of a car. And with the likes of, you know, M3s and stuff of the era, it probably wouldn't have gone down very well. So I feel like, yes, I love cars like this and I love the idea of it, but of course it wouldn't have worked in the UK. Secondly, very odd car for this for someone from the UK. I know the Mustangs, driven a few, we've had a few on the channel, but this is odd, but not odd at the same time, because again, I do feel like this would have worked in the UK, because it is very Escort Mondeo-esque in my opinion. It's the FPV F6R spec Typhoon. Now, I do feel like the Australians do it in a very different way, and I love the Australian stuff, especially Utes, which we'll get onto in a minute. This was a turbocharged Bearer engine, 4-litre inline 4, so about 365 horsepower, and we're saying 556 newton meters of torque. It's a lot of power in what is basically a, you know, a family sedan, although it looks a little bit more hyped up. I've put down here in my notes, it reminds me of an FD2, because if you look at them side by side, you would sort of get the idea that these are pretty similar, but of course they are. But they took that idea of sort of the FD2. The FD2 didn't come turbocharged. It does remind me of that car, or it reminds me of sort of what would be a hyped up version of a Mondeo and Escort in between. So like an in between of both of those cars. This is what it would have been in the UK, and it came with distinctive R-Spec badging, limited to just 300 units. You even got a certificate with this car to show it was the real deal. Stiffer suspension, 19-inch wheels, leather seats, and you could special order this car with custom option colour choices. So yeah, a bit of an odd one there. I genuinely think something like that would have worked in the UK. The engine was slightly too big, I think, for the UK market, so they could have dialed it back a little bit, but I think the looks and how it was could have actually worked in the UK. Let me know in the comments below if you think that car would have worked in the UK. Okay, thirdly, we're getting onto the pickup trucks. I love pickup trucks. So, SVT Lightning pickup, so the first generation between 93 and 95. This is a USA only car. First gens were powered by a 351 cubic inch 5.8 litre Windsor V8. Only 240 horsepower though, but this is of course, you know, V8s from America are always lacking. I just feel that way. 11,563 Lightnings were sold over the 3-year period, and 0 to 60 was dealt with in about 7 seconds. Now this wasn't as fast as the Cyclone at the time, but it still had the payload and the off-road ability, which of course made it its own. It made it into, yes, a functioning truck that you could use and go out and enjoy, but it made it a fast one. And I found that it can tow up to 8,400 pounds, so that is quite a lot for a performance orientated pickup truck. Lowered up front by 1 inch and 2.5 at the rear, and wearing 17-inch alloy wheels. I do think though, this era of pickup truck, you know, square bodies, I had a 70s D100 pickup truck, love the squareness of it, so I have a liking to this. I love the idea of square bodied trucks, but this one being a slightly newer one, you know, 90s one, but it has that engine in it and it has Lightning badging down the side of it, which is really, really cool. But yeah, pickup truck we would have never got here. The UK doesn't welcome pickup trucks until recently, really. The Rangers and, you know, your Navaras and stuff. I do think a hot pickup truck, 2-seater as well, 3-seater with a bench, I don't think would have worked whatsoever here. So that is right to keep it in the US market, although I'd love to see one over here. If you have one, although we have shot a 2nd gen for the channel, I'd love to see a 1st gen in the UK. Okay, number 4. Another slightly odd one. In fact, when I saw the first picture of this, from someone that likes modified cars, max power and stuff, this looks like the most max power pickup truck I've ever seen. It's the 2002 Ford Falcon XR8 Pursuit 250 from Australia. So this is an Australian ute pickup truck, 5.6 litre Trickford V8 engine. Now this had a lot going on though. It wasn't just your typical ute. I have seen and been around a few utes in my time, but never anything like this. CNC ported machined GT40-P heads, bigger inlet and exhaust, valves, 82mm throttle body, increased fuel pressure with lightweight pistons and billet connecting rods in a pickup truck. That is so, a 5.6 litre with just some like race car pedigree underneath. That's just madness. It's available in a 4-speed auto and a 5-speed manual, so you could get a manual version of this as well. And it had a heavy duty clutch, so if you did, you know, have a payload behind you, it wouldn't actually be too much of a worry or a stress on the vehicle. Body kit included a front air dam, side skirts and back bumper. And it, again, had these weird red headlights. Like, when I first saw the picture of this, I thought it was a modified one. I thought someone's put my red headlights on, you know, a ute. No, they genuinely came from the factory like this, which is really, really odd, but really, really cool. It also came with an LSD in the back of it. So, again, from the top, 5.6 litre, manual, you could get this in with an LSD. Can you imagine the fun you could have had in one of these? And yeah, 18-inch wheels, 250 kilowatts of power, and 500 newton meters of torque. Quite a lot. I think it's enough in something that's literally got no weight over the back of it. And it also, get this right, leather seats, of course, because it's, you know, quite a nice spec. Had a Momo steering wheel from the factory in a ute. How cool was this thing? Like, that sounds insane to me as a pickup truck lover. Don't see too many cool pickup trucks in the UK. Again, this wouldn't have worked in the UK though. Why it isn't here? Well, of course, it would never work here. 5.6 litre V8 in a pickup truck with 2-3 seats in it. It just would never have worked here, unfortunately. But I love the idea, again, of a hyped up pickup truck. So glad the Australians took it on and actually used that. And of course, you know, they must have been so much fun to drive one of those. Big power, LSD in the back of it, Momo steering wheel from factory. That is cool. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it would ever have took off in the UK. Now, lastly, are you ready for some weirdness? Because this is very weird. So the 1st gen Ford Festivia. No, this isn't a Ford Fiesta. No, it is not a Kia Pride either. This is a US, Australian and Japanese derived Ford that came out in the US, and of course it was designed by Mazda and Ford between 1986 and 2002. So actually, you know, quite a big window in obviously different marks and different generations, but this actually came out a Festiva. The name actually comes from the Spanish word for festive. Now, weirdly, this has, of course, no relation whatsoever to the Ford Fiesta at all. Because it was a Mazda product and a Kia product in, you know, North Korea and stuff, we would again know this car very well as a Kia Pride. And looking at it, it looks pretty identical to what we got here as a Kia Pride. It looks like it is the same thing, same interior, same pretty much everything. They got a couple of trim levels. It was in a 1.3 and you got an L, an L Plus and an LX trim level. But the weird thing is, so get this, now neither of these sold very well in Japan, which I think is really, really odd. So in 1989, they only sold 973 cars. I do feel like that is because maybe the engines were slightly too big. Of course, Japan, I'm not sure in the late 80s, early 90s, but they have sort of a blanket thing where if you're going into cities, you really should be running a 600 to 700cc engine in your car. That's why K cars exist, and they exist very, very well out there. This, of course, a 1.1 or 1.3 would be completely cancelled out for that. So I think Kia or whoever they were in Japan, or Mazda at the time, or Daihatsu at the time, would have probably come out with something with a smaller engine and maybe even a smaller car. But of course, you think that's a small car here, you go to Japan, you realise how small some of their cars are because of course infrastructure is very, very different. And yeah, the two base models in the US came with a 4-speed manual transmission. The LX was upgraded to a 5-speed. It also had a rev gauge, which is very exciting, a tilt steering wheel, and featured in the LX trim was alloy wheels, remote mirrors, cloth interior seating, and an FM AM radio. So yeah, a bit of an odd one, a curveball on that end one. I tried to find something that was sort of multinational in a sense, so something that was used here and in America and in Japan and in Australia and, you know, everywhere else. And I think that of all cars is one of the most random ones. I have never seen a Ford badge on the front of what I believe to be a Kia Pride. It's very, very odd, and it's cool to see though. It's good that Mazda and Ford got together at the time and obviously made a mass-produced smaller vehicle for everybody in America at the time. Fuel crisis and stuff were going on, so I can completely see why. And lastly, of course, that works in the UK, so that on the follow-on is you know, something that would have worked in the UK 100% because I've seen them. Anyway, that is the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully some of this information is good for you guys. I love trying to find out stuff for weird cars that we didn't get in the UK because I love weird cars. But thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.